just vamp for a minute.
Okay, I'm learning some.
Here we go.
Good evening, good folks, and welcome to the City of Muskegon City Commission work session for this Monday, November 13th. I do have a number of public comment forms up here already that's been completed. Please know that public comment at our work session is reserved at the end of the meeting, and at a general session, there is public comment at the beginning meeting on any agenda items, as well as another public comment period at the end of the meeting on anything you wish to discuss. At work sessions, public comment is at the end of the meeting. And there's still time to complete those public comment forms. If you do have something to share, the forms are at the back of the room. Please provide your name and home address. Note I will not be sharing your home address nor asking you to publicly announce it. I will just be calling you up by neighborhood, or if you live in a neighboring city or township or village, I'll acknowledge that. We do also have phone-in comment as well, so folks watching at home, look for the phone number scrolling along the bottom of the screen when we get to public comment time, and you can phone in your comments as well. So we can get started, may I have roll call, please?
Commissioner Hood,
Here.
Mayor Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner St. Clair,
Here.
Commissioner Ramsey, absent, Vice Mayor German, absent, Commissioner Gorman,
Here.
Commissioner Emery.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum. So first up on our new business is a Bebop report from City Manager's office with a presentation.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm just going to introduce you. You can come up. So for those of you who don't know Jamie Cross, Jamie Jamie is here to give us a summary of what's happened with the Bebot over the last season. I think several of you were at Pierre Marquette when that thing got demonstrated for us and saw how cool it was. So I'm grateful that Jamie's here to talk about the experiences that she had with it and give us some data on what was collected and maybe talk about steps forward. So, Jamie Cross.
Thank you. So, you know my role as a resident, but at my role at the Annis Water Resources Institute, I have two. I'm the lead science instructor on the WG Jackson. I hope you've all had an opportunity to be out there. If not, hopefully it'll present itself. So, the other job I have is I work for Dr. Al Steinman in his lab, and it is working these two robots, specifically more the Bebot than the on the water. We have two robots here. So you can go ahead and advance, Anne, if you want the next slide. So these are the two robots. This is part of the Great Lakes plastic cleanup. So, which includes using innovative technologies to remove litter, specifically plastic, from the waterways. The top two, the Bebot is on top, and the second one is the Pixie drone. That's a water cleanup machine, and those two we have at AWRI. The bottom two are other technologies that are used in stormwater infrastructure to capture debris before it ever enters the water. So the Great Lakes Plastic Cleanup is trying these innovative solutions to see how they work, to see how we can advance more sustainability in the Great Lakes. You can go ahead and next slide, Ann. So there are 4 university partners that are working with us. Grand Valley State University, Annis Water Resources Institute, Ohio Sea Grant, so Michigan Sea Grant, which is in Traverse City working, and then there's a Wisconsin Sea Grant also. You can advance. The umbrella organization is the Council of the Great Lakes Region. This is one of their initiatives. So looking at sustainable uses in the Great Lakes. And then it's funded, this particular project is funded by Meyer. Here in West Michigan, as you know, Meyer is in our area, so they're an important player in terms of sustainability here in the area. So next slide. Project goals. There are 3 goals. The first one is to remove plastic litter from beaches and waterways. So why is that important? To date, over 8 billion tons of plastic have been produced. Of that 8 billion, about 20% is recycled. The rest either ends up in a landfill or in the environment. It is estimated that 22 million tons of plastic enter the Great Lakes every year. And I just read a report yesterday that said that estimation by the University of Toledo is probably low, so much higher than the 22,000. So plastic also is it's man-made, and so it never actually really breaks down. It just breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces until you can't see anymore, but it's still in the environment. So plastic is an issue we know. We don't know all the problems with plastic to date. We're learning more. We do know that aquatic organisms will ingest it, thinking it's food, and can create issues for those organisms. We also know that toxic pollutants will attach to plastics. So think about a fish eating some kind of a contaminated piece of plastic, and then you eating that fish. So the concern is what toxic chemicals end up into the flesh of the animals that consume it and how it feeds up the food chain. So there's a lot more to learn about plastics in the environment, but we know that they're definitely present. So next, the other project goals are to gather data and conduct education and outreach. And you can advance. So there's 2 robots. They're remote controlled. This one I don't run. There's another AWR staffer that runs this. This is the Pixie drone. So this is a water boat. It actually has an open area. It goes through, remote controlled, and then it picks up debris as it goes. It does also pick up a lot of weeds, you can see here. So that's the Pixie drone. And if you go ahead and advance, we'll talk about the Bee-Bot. The Bee-Bot, I think it's a real monster on the beach. It does a great job of what it was built to do. It's definitely smaller than the city machine. I will say the city of Muskegon does an excellent job of cleaning the beaches. So this isn't about how clean our beaches, because our beaches are very clean, not only the city, but individuals, and we all volunteer groups that go down there and clean up. So the way the Bee-Bot works is that back end drops down, it vibrates, stuff is collected, and there's a screen back there, so the sand drops through and the stuff ends up in the back of the machine. You can see the Bee-Bot doesn't discriminate between litter and non-litter items, so you can see on the right side, that is what the Bee-Bot drops. There is litter in there, along with shells and rocks and other material collected by the Bee-Bot. The next slide, please, Ann. So then I take it all back to the Annis Water Resources Institute, and we actually sort through it. So it goes into a bin of water, and so some things float, some things sink. Most of the plastic does float, and so that gets pulled out. We also pull out the wood and separate the wood. So wood, plastic, all litter items are separated out, and then we start to sort them also. And next slide. We also have a local project, local partnership with Goodwill Industries. Nick Carlson is the lead from Goodwill Industries in West Michigan. And so we're working they are getting equipment together, and they're very close to having everything set and ready to go. They will be recycling the plastics that we collect into a hydro blocks, and those are for stormwater, to be able to move stormwater through systems, so they'll be used in the ground. And then the other one is the DACA wood. So I mentioned that we're also separating the wood, and they're collecting the wood, and then we'll be making products out of that wood. That should be starting within the next couple months is the hope, if they can get everything pulled together. And they did mention, and I hope Nick's okay with this, about making a bench for the beach with some of the wood that was recycled from the beach. So that would be kind of cool. The next slide, please. So the other thing I do is I catalog results. So this is an idea of what's picked up. You can see there's a splattering of things that comments, cigarette butts. Notice the plastic pieces. Socks, shoes, those are common things. It's always interesting to see what you might find on the beach. Next slide. Here are the results. So these are the top 10. The yellowish bar on the top is everything but the top 10. So you can see it's really not that much. There's only 1,400. All the other items that are not in the top 10. We think of cigarette butts as being number one. If you look at what we collect with the B-Bot, it's by far plastic fragments. So plastic fragments are hard pieces of plastic that you can't identify as anything else. I also separate them into larger than or less than 3 centimeters. So you can see, even though people point a lot at cigarette butts, plastic is everybody's a user of plastic. So, there are only some, people that smoke, but then there are the people that are using all the plastic. So this kind of, to me, is telltaling in terms of what is really out there is a lot of plastic. And cigarette butts are also made from plastic, just so a lot of people don't think that. Next slide. So then we break it down a little bit more. So I actually have to weigh everything. And if you look at the weight overall, over nearly 70% of everything that we pick up is plastic. So everything, that's the rest of it's paper or metal or rubber or some other type of material. And then when I break it down even more, you'll look at what's over and under 3 centimeters, just the fragments. So that on the right is just the plastic fragments. And so over 80% of the plastic fragments that we pick up are under 3 centimeters. So that is kind of the thing with the B-Bot. It's really good at picking up the smaller stuff. It picks up the big stuff too, but you guys pick that up with the City Sweeper. This I can go behind the City Sweeper and even pick up more because of the size of the screen on the B-Bot. It actually dials down into those smaller little teeny pieces of things. Okay, next slide. It's really important that we do the outreach and education. So the slide on the right is at Heritage Landing, and the guy in the corner there is Brandon. If you don't know who Brandon is, I call him the water warrior. He's out cleaning the lake all the time. He's picking up. And then on the left, that's Club 188 doing the Go boating program at Fisherman's Landing. So we're getting it out and we're exposing people to what we're doing in addition to the data. So next slide and last slide. Some more outreach and education. I will say, and I should have gotten the number, but I think we've reached over 4,000 people this year between the work with the I've been doing with the different events. So on the bottom there, that big group is Meyer employees. There's over 100 there that come out. In the lower right, that is your local Adopt a Beach team that monthly goes out to do beach cleanups. Jill and Scott. I was at the Great Lakes Surf Festival running the B-Bot. That was a lot of fun. I plan to be at the beer festival next year. And then the kids on the left, we actually had kids come and sort at AWI as part of a learning experience. So these are just some of the outreach projects I've done with the B-Bot to just expose people to what we're doing and the results, because it really is people is the solution. So that's kind of a wrap up. We are running the B-Bot again next year, so maybe hoping to expand it into other areas beyond Muskegon, which would be kind of fun. But we are at Pure Marquette. I usually try to get there 2 to 3 times a week. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Great presentation. And excellent efforts. We take any questions in case the commission has any? All right, commissioners, do you have any questions or anything you wish to share?
Thank you.
With Mrs. Cross?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, Regional Transit Authority Resolution. Welcome back, Deputy City Manager Leanne Mikesell.
You're welcome. You might get tired of seeing me up here tonight.
Never.
I don't really like to be the star of the show. So I am bringing this to you. Hopefully you're all aware of the work that I've been doing, participating with other municipalities in the county to look at this idea of developing a regional transit authority. We've been meeting regularly. We had a consultant that was hired through the West Michigan Shoreline Regional Development Commission that helped us through a study, and Aaron Kuhn is here to give you some information on that. We finished that, and now we're in the next steps. So what is on your agenda for tomorrow night is a request to have you approve a resolution that will support this group continuing forward with this regional transit authority idea and developing it and starting to work through articles of incorporation and those kinds of things, our bylaws and whatnot. So your packet includes a memo from an attorney that's helping us through this process and the resolution. So what I'm going to do at this point is turn it over to Aaron, and then Jim Coons from MATS is here to probably answer all the questions that I can't. So I'm gonna, without further ado, I will introduce Aaron. There is a handout that Aaron had provided, and that is at your seats.
Well, welcome. If you can introduce
Thank you.
yourself and
Yes.
your organization.
Erin Kuhn, Executive Director of the West Michigan Shoreline Regional Development Commission. And it's a pleasure to be here this evening to talk about the work we've been doing over the last few years. In 2019, the Muskegon County, the Muskegon Area Transit System, as well as Harbor Transit in Northern Ottawa County, came to our agency asking us to look at and do a study to receive a grant to do a study to look at the two organizations individually, look at how they're structured, how they're managed. Is there a better way that they can work internally? So the purpose was not to look externally at routes or services between the two agencies, but really the internal look at how they're funded, how they're structured, and is that the most efficient way that they are running? And then look at the potential of merging the two organizations to have one regional transit organization. So the study concluded this spring. The recommendations of the study for Harbor Transit was to not do any changes at this time. The organization, those that manage the organization were happy with, and those that were involved in the study providing feedback were happy with the way the organization is right now. They function as a transit authority under Public Act 196. However, Muskegon, the Muskegon Area Transit System, their recommendation was that there really did need to be some changes, and they had some a variety of recommendations for the county to consider. The one that rose to the top was to create an independent transit authority, so removing that from as being a department of the county to its own transit authority, working with local units of government within the central core area of Muskegon here. And with that, we're looking at this spring, or this a couple months ago, September, early September, the county passed a resolution authorizing staff to continue towards the development, working with communities towards the development of an independent authority. So that was a really big step. And we're here today to ask you to, Leanne has been a very good representation of the city at all the meetings, and we're here to ask you to pass the resolution and have Leanne continue to represent the city moving forward. The interests of you as the board, as well as the residents of the city being involved. We all know how important public transit is for many of the residents here in the city. So we just ask that you continue to be involved in that and to send Leanne. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Coons to answer questions that I can't answer as well.
Thank you. Jim Coons, County of Muskegon, Muskegon Area Transit System.
Welcome.
Thank you. And I'm not going to add a lot to what Aaron has said. This process has been ongoing for a few years now, and the county has indicated that it desires to remove itself from operating and overseeing the public transportation system. So that is why we're looking to create a new entity to do that. The Public Act 196 is a mechanism that exists in the state of Michigan for independent transportation authorities that can be singularly purposed and have a mission to solve transportation issues and provide those services in the community. So that's the direction we would like to go. Interestingly enough, as we did the study and looked at this, public transportation used to be private until the 1960s. The city from 65 to 68 subsidized a private operator to keep it going when privates couldn't do it themselves. Then the city ran it from 68 to 72. In 1972, the city ceased to operate a public transit system. 1973, a study was done to say, how can we get service back? And at the time, the recommendation was the quickest way to do it was to have the county step in and operate it so that it could cross borders, it could work with multiple communities. But in that 1973 study, it also said, develop a transit authority. And so we're 49 years later, we'll be celebrating 50 years this coming year, and we're coming back around to try to make this happen so that we have a good transportation solution in the community. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can about the process or about Act 196, or where we may go from here.
Excellent. So 49 years later, but better late than never. Okay. Commissioners, questions on this item, and the process, and where we're at, and where we're maybe going? All right, so this is on our agenda for tomorrow to adopt this resolution that's formally recognizing our continued participation in this process. Again, designating a representative on behalf of the City of Muskegon with the authority. What are the next steps thereafter? So all the willing partners and participants across Muskegon County adopt this resolution, appoint somebody. Can you help us understand what the subsequent steps thereafter?
Yep. So presently we are serving primarily the urban core of the community, which consists of the 4 cities: Muskegon, Muskegon Heights, Norton Shores, Roosevelt Park, Muskegon Township. And so those are the entities that have been working on this, and we are in the process this month of going to each of their boards, councils, to ask for passage of this resolution. Whichever of them join will be at the table as we continue to develop articles of incorporation. Those articles of incorporation, as they go through iterations of the development team, at some point will be brought back to the cities in each city for adoption, if they're to your satisfaction. Okay. Ultimately, I think is pretty well explained in the memorandum that you have, ultimately, which the communities determine what geography gets included in the authority, whether it be the entire city or just certain precincts. So those are decisions that will be developed. That will ultimately become part of the Articles of Incorporation, establishing the boundaries of this authority in a physical aspect. Those Articles of Incorporation then get filed with the state. A new entity is created. Decisions will then need to be made along the way about how things are operated, what services are provided. All of that needs to be determined. How funding is raised. All of those are decisions to be made. But the first step is, what are the boundaries of this organization, and where will it serve? And who will be on the board, and how the board will be established. Ultimately, service can be provided within that authority boundaries. It can be provided outside of those authority boundaries by contract if there's a community that wants something but doesn't want to participate in the authority, or for some reason is outside of that. So that's where we're going. We're hoping to have 4 or 5 communities all agree to develop these, and then we'll bring it back for your consideration.
All right, excellent. So just one more step forward in the continued evolution of how we provide public transit, and following up on that original recommendation from 1973, as well as a more recent recommendation to move this forward so that we have kind of parity of operations with Harbor Transit as we explore further partnerships and potential merging down the road, so that we have that inter-regional public transit available.
Right, and
well.
that's something I forgot to mention is the regional connection. So there is a regional connection happening, and Jim can talk a little bit more about that, but the study recommended continued conversations on how we can strengthen that regional partnership. Creating an authority in Muskegon County gets us one step closer to a potential regional, multi-county regional transit authority. Harbor Transit is already PA 196, so a potential merger in the future, if the will is there, would make that easier. Right now, the organizations are too too different in their functions and how they're governed to make that big of a leap.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for joining us this evening and updating us on the process and inviting us to continue to be involved in that process as it moves forward. Sounds like there's still several more steps to be done, and we don't need to necessarily get into the weeds right now because there's a lot more details will be coming to light and a lot more decisions to be made going forward. But if there are thoughts or questions, feel free to ask or share them right now. Commissioner Emery?
I just want, just to clarify, our vote tomorrow is only to say, yes, we want to be part of this regional transit system, not what it's going to look like. We're going to look at that later.
Right, so the resolution of intent that you're being asked to pass is that you intend to join the authority if the articles of incorporation that are developed are to your satisfaction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Emery. Any other final questions or thoughts?
I just wanted to say thank you so much to Leanne and Aaron because this has been such a intensive process, overwhelming process. I think our residents clearly want public transportation to continue, but I really feel like we have the right people in the right place right now to make it happen. And just to reiterate what Aaron was saying, we did, as a member of the Metropolitan Transportation Planning Organization of Wimserdick, we had a meeting in the city of Grand Haven recently, and I was shocked to hear how many of their residents expressed support to get cross-county transportation so they can access services within the city of Muskegon too. So I'm very excited that we're taking one more step forward in a very long process, but thank you both again for being here and always showing up for our city.
Here, here. Thank you, Commissioner Gorman. Commissioner Hood?
Yeah, I just to go back on what Commissioner Emery said. The vote is going to take place tomorrow, correct? And we're voting on, just say it one more time so I can make sure I got it.
Resolution of letter of intent.
Of intent.
Intent.
Okay.
Yep. So there's nothing definitive or finalized tomorrow. It's a letter of intent and appointing someone to continue in the process.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
All right, moving on. Next up, local street reconstructions, DPW. And we're being joined by our DPW director, Dan Vanderhyde. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Bear with me just a moment while I plug this in here. All right. So this item is something that came about out of some conversations that we had earlier this year. We were talking at the time about the water fund, but that led to a discussion about how various parts of our infrastructure are funded. And at the time, the commission expressed a desire to investigate funding for local streets. And while that conversation is far from over, and this is certainly not a long-term solution to that problem, we did look at the state of the street funds and found that even keeping 6 months recommended minimum cash, 6 months minimum expenses in cash, that there was some money available in the fund that had not been programmed. And so this is a proposal to you all to take a good portion of that money, $625,000, and spend that on local street reconstructions. These streets have been selected because their utilities are in good shape, with the exception of lead service lines, which would be replaced before the work was done. They were selected based on their condition. They are four of definitely the worst streets in the city. They were selected due to geographic location, essentially a street or two in each part of town. And they were selected because they fit really within our ability as an engineering department and as a public works department to complete. So specifically, the 4 streets that are being proposed are up on the screen, and I'll work my way through them here. This first one here is New Street. It runs from Calvin to Evanston. It sits almost up against the highway between Apple and Laketon. The entire roadway is owned and maintained by the city. We receive the gas taxes for the road. However, the properties on the east side of the road are in the township. So we're working with the township to determine if they're able to contribute to the project. Regardless, we as the city have the obligation to maintain the street, and so we would move forward regardless. The other, or the next project, I should say. Skipped a few. So this one is 2nd Street from, it's a little strangely oriented, but it's from Muskegon to Houston. There's a little island at the south end of the project, and so we do both sides of that island as it approaches Houston Avenue. This street is very narrow. It's in very, very poor condition. One little note about this street, I do have to point out that Commissioner Gorman lives on it. However, the street was identified to us long before she was a commissioner and has been on our list since that time. It is also, as I mentioned, definitely one of the worst streets in the city, and I apologize to her and her neighbors for its condition.
We're excited. On that point, if I may, just to confirm, thank you for acknowledging that a member of the commission sits on the street in which we anticipate allocating resources to reconstruct. Is there a requisite declaration of conflict of interest that comes alongside that? Okay, just wanted to...
No, yeah, we talked to Schreier about it. There's a variety of reasons why, but
she's not personally finding
she's
benefiting
not.
financially.
Yeah, it's a function of the of the city, and it was identified before she was on the commission.
Yeah.
So
now, if she happened to be working for the road contractor, that'd be a different story.
Yeah, that would be a different story
because it's just a public road that she happens to.
Or I mean, if you like, we can pass a rule that no road that a commissioner lives on can ever be worked on.
I just wanted to get clarity on that and make sure we understand.
Yes.
But thank you for that acknowledgement.
The last 2 are on the same map here. One of those is Millard Avenue, which is again kind of strangely oriented. It actually runs, Millard comes off of Lakeshore but then splits. So the portion that we'd be doing, I can point it out on the map here, is this stretch right here. And we're calling that from Lake Dunes Drive to the west end. And again, this is a project that actually we found in the files design plans from 20 years ago. So that is how long this road has been in poor condition.
Our desperately needs it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the last road is Edgewater from Thompson to Lakeshore. This one is actually on the list because we are planning, the lead service lines on this street are included in the DWRF project that is happening this next summer in the Bluffton neighborhood, Wilcox, Thompson, Edgewater, etc. Just the lead service lines were going to be done on Edgewater, and we were planning to just resurface the road. However, in looking at it, we found that the street is in much worse condition than we anticipated. We were hoping to save the curbs and simply put new asphalt on top, but that is not going to work. And so that is another project that we're proposing to rebuild. As a part of that project, we do plan or hope to make changes to the intersection with Lakeshore. Our Deputy Manager Mike Sell spoke to the folks at Haggers Hideaway earlier this year and explained some of these changes. They were not opposed, at least at the time that she met with them. So we went ahead and drew this up. Essentially what we'd be doing is closing off the ability for cars to drive straight from Lakeshore onto Edgewater and reorienting it into a more traditional intersection. It has a couple of different benefits. The driveways for Haggers Hideaway in particular are currently a little strange and probably prone to confusion. One exits into a one-way right here, and one exits into a no man's land, I guess we'll call it. That's one of the benefits that we see. The other is a reduction in speed as folks transition from Bluffton neighborhood proper. It also will provide a safer crossing for folks who are crossing from the bike path into that neighborhood or to the businesses on that side. We'll be able to move that crosswalk into an area that has better sight distance for both the pedestrians and the vehicles. Is an additional benefit, I guess you might say, as it opens up some space at that intersection, which our deputy manager will do next item. So, just to be clear about all the various proposals, we are proposing 2 of these projects to be built in the spring, Edgewater and Millard. That's a function of having most of the engineering done for both of those projects already. And the other 2 projects, New and Second Street, would be added to the capital plan for next year. So we'd be reforecasting $625,000 into the local streets fund this year in order to pay for both Edgewater and Millard, as well as the engineering for New Street and Second Street. And then Second Street and New Street would be added to the capital plan for next year's budget and approved for the construction side of things through the traditional process. We included those in this proposal because historically we have not used gas tax funds for local streets, and so we wanted to be clear that that's part of this proposal. So I welcome any questions about it, including how we might fund local streets in the future.
Excellent, thank you. But I appreciate you and your team evaluating these options and bringing us some recommendations. That is something that the commission not too long ago expressed an interest in allocating more resources to our local street projects, repairs, reconstruction. So I'm happy to see this moving forward in that capacity. One question I have with regard to what's on the screen right here is, as I understand it, you're looking at doing Edgewater by virtue of piggybacking on the work that's already being done in the immediate vicinity, not only for lead service line replacements on that portion of the street, but also the sewer and water main replacements elsewhere in the old town Bluffton, I'll call it, and the street reconstruction happening there. So this would be able to piggyback on that and realize some cost efficiencies or economies of scale by doing so. It is not due to, we didn't add Edgewater because we want to create green space for an art project.
That's correct. So we, as I said, Edgewater was always a part of the DWRF project for this next summer for the lead service line replacements, and we were planning to resurface it. We found that it was in too poor of condition to do so, so we're adding it to this proposal. The intersection here, frankly, we would do regardless of whether art were placed in that spot or not. Feel pretty strongly that the current situation is encouraging folks to speed, and I've done a search, and there were 4 accidents at this intersection in the past 10 years. So it's something that we think will improve safety regardless of what may go in that green space.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Director Vanderhyde. Commissioners, questions, thoughts? Commissioner Emery.
I do. First off, relaying a message to you from the residents of Millard is that they are very happy that this is in the plan. In fact, very, very happy. It's the next, and also the residents and the people who travel Edgewater are excited about this happening. One of the things that was pointed out to me was vehicles carrying very large boats, 40-foot or more boats, making that curve it's going to be extremely hard to do. And that was the reason many years ago that the road was made straight there, going towards the yacht club.
We have heard this concern, although not directly, but we have seen concern about it in the community, I guess I will say. And, you know, the reality is that any street in town can be designed to accommodate any vehicles. So the radius that's shown on this sketch is extra wide, we would call it, in order to accommodate several things. Delivery vehicles for the businesses in the area, those boats, and our own fire apparatus. This is a conceptual sketch. When we get into the detailed design, we always talk with the businesses and residents along the street. If there's a specific trailer size or boat size that the yacht club would like us to try on the computer through this intersection, we'd be happy to do that and make sure that it's designed to accommodate that.
Okay, I also heard from the powers that be from the Vikings that they were not interested in doing this and changing their driveways to their buildings. So just so that you know that I did hear that. So.
Okay, yep, we will certainly meet with them and talk to them about it. As I said, you know, it was our understanding that Deputy Manager Mike Sell had met with some folks, or one person in particular from there very early in the process, and at that time they said they did not seem opposed, but we'll certainly circle back and find out what their concerns are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Emery. Any other questions or thoughts, commissioners? So in this proposed one right here for Lakeshore and Edgewater, speaking of the ingress egress for Hager's Hideaway, looks like one will be lost and the other one will have to be moved or differently situated so that this still has access. So it'll be one entryway and exit for Hager's Hideaway. Vikings will have its own under this proposal. Vikings would still have its own further down the road, but Hager's Hideaway would have its own, just one.
That is the likeliest outcome, yes.
Okay.
That is not to say that they have to look, you know, similar to what they do today, right?
Mm-hmm.
They could be in different locations, they could be expanded and improved, things like that. And I would say, you know, there'd be no reason that we wouldn't expand and improve them, given that they're essentially residential driveways serving a commercial business.
Mm-hmm.
Our natural process would be to improve those driveways as a part of a project like this.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If this were to proceed as is, and I will just share as a comment, I do have a little bit of reservation about this existence. I mean, happy to see Edgewater be reconstructed there. I do have a little bit of reservation in terms of the new layout myself, just personally. But let's say this moves forward as proposed. Do we have the option to... I see one already. Do we have an option, but that's going to the store. Do we have an option to add a crosswalk from connecting Hager's Hideaway, Vikings to the other side somewhere as we're doing that project? Can we add a crosswalk directly connecting that? Because I know that there's a large parking lot on the other side as well up the street. Like, can we add a crosswalk somewhere to better connect Hager's Hideaway, Vikings, to the, I guess, what would that be? The west side of Lakeshore Drive?
Yes. So actually one of the benefits that we see of this layout, although it's not shown fully on this conceptual sketch yet, but once we're into the details of design, we anticipate moving the crosswalk that's currently over right here, actually over here to the other side of the intersection.
Okay.
To where my mouse here on the screen is, to the east side of the intersection, which would would be a safer crosswalk regardless of other benefits, but would probably also serve in that purpose that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and I'll say, I mean, I'm not. My reservations are not necessarily set in stone. Like, I'm absolutely dead set against this. It's just, anytime there's change, there's going to be some level of resistance to it. I've driven this so many times over my decades of life and used to the existing configuration, and it served well from my experience for how I've used it. But I have one unique perspective that is not a complete perspective. I would be interested in hearing from more of the adjoining property owner who'd be most affected, as well as residents from the surrounding area. I can see pros and cons. I can see how it could be an improvement to traffic flow, even though it's just an adjustment to our habits, and we are creatures of habit. So when those habits are forced to be changed, we don't like it. But I could see some safety improvements there.
If it helps, this design is also a lower cost than the existing design rebuilt.
So if we rebuilt, see, I like. See, now you're singing my tune. I like cost savings. So if we were to reconstruct as is, it'd be a higher cost, as you're saying. With
Correct.
this, it'd be a lower cost.
Correct.
Gotcha. And with the expectation to be improved safety and a replaced crosswalk or a relocated crosswalk. And because it's a sloping curve, it's not a hard right turn, we still would expect people to be able to get off fairly easily, and we're not going to see, you do not anticipate we're going to see backups in traffic there.
I do
That's
not.
part of my concern is the amount of traffic, particularly in the summertime, that we see going westbound through there, the concern for potential congestion or backups right there in that spot, and whereas before you could just keep on going forward or continue going to the lake, that if we're now having them all go one direction and then split off, that it could. But you have no reason to be concerned about excessive congestion or backups at that spot the way that is currently designed.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. So I think we all welcome the ideas of and your work to find projects that we can allocate those resources, and using even some of our gas taxes, which we've not historically done. And we've had expressed an appetite to do so. And so we want to see more investment and more resources put to bear into our local streets. So I certainly think we as a commission welcome that. What are the next steps then? Like, this is going to be, you said the capital plan will need to be updated. That'll be for the next fiscal year budget. But we're just essentially signing off on the direction that we're going with this. You'd have to put it out to bid in terms of the actual projects themselves. They'd come back to the commission. We'd have to approve each project after them being bidded.
Correct. So we're just presenting the proposal to you tonight so that when you see it in the budget reforecast, as I described, a $625,000 transfer from major to local, that would, explain why that's happening. The actual construction projects and things like that would be brought to you as individual expenses.
So there's still time for you and our team to engage with the adjoining property owner and the surrounding residents and users of that area before anything's finalized.
Absolutely. This is as far as the design has gone right here. So.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions or comments at this time? All right. Well, thank you again. Appreciate the work you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see these investments. Yeah, I know those people on New Street and Millard are going to be over the moon excited.
Yes.
Like, for these roads to be reconstructed. They've been in bad shape and only getting worse.
New Street hasn't been done since I was a kid, so that was a long time ago.
Yeah, and portions of Millard look like they're just turning into gravel. Like, it's, whew. But anyhow, next item, Buster Keaton Public Art. Welcome back, Deputy Director Mike Zell.
Hi. Third time's a charm? Or 3 strikes you're out, I'm not sure. But I'm up here for
Well, you
a
haven't
third
had
time.
one strike yet tonight, so.
Good. Good. Okay, well, I'm here tonight to talk to you about a potential project with the Muskegon City Public Art Initiative. And knowing that maybe not everybody knows very much about that initiative, I thought maybe I'd give a little background on that first. So the Muskegon City Public Art Initiative started in 2018. It's a project of the Community Foundation for Muskegon County, and it was founded by Patrick O'Leary, who donated startup funds for 10 monumental works of public art to be placed in the city of Muskegon, though we have ventured out a little bit. So the past projects that have been completed include the Mastodons on the Loose. So you've seen Moxie and her babies running around downtown. City Built on Timber, which is at Heritage Landing. Celebrating Muskegon, which is in the traffic circle at Pierre Marquette. The Muskegon Rails Project, so that's one of the instances where we went outside the city and did the murals on the railroad bridges. One Drop is at the Convention Center. What Defines Muskegon is the mural on our own arena. And the latest installation, Band Together, the second time that we've left the city, and that's the Drum Major sculpture that's in Rowan Park in Muskegon Heights. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 10 projects. Something else to know is that our Downtown Arts Committee reviews each of these projects for selection and deliberates on all of them, helps with the planning. I serve on that committee, as does our own Commissioner Gorman, as well as other people. I'm not sure how large that committee is. Yeah, 10 or 12 people maybe. So a proposal that's in front of us now and that the Downtown Arts Committee strongly supports is Buster and Minnie. So the project is based on book cover art from the book called Bluffton and written by Matt Phelan. I'm not sure if I'm saying that properly. That a scan of the book cover is in your packet. I can show it to you, but I was going to bring the book with me and I forgot. Sorry. So it's representative of Buster Keaton as a boy and Minnie, the elephant who used to live in the artist colony in Bluffton. The sculpture will commemorate the presence of one of the best movie producers. The Keaton family was in the Muskegon area in the early 1900s, and Buster rose to fame in the silent film era, as many of you I'm sure already know. His career spanned over 3 decades, and many of his pioneering techniques and technologies became standard practice in the film industry. Keaton's connection to Muskegon is significant, and this project would allow us to tell the story of his connection to Muskegon and honor that heritage. So it's important to the committee that the location of this project be within the artist colony. We are working with Ron Pesh, who I see is in our audience. He's our local Buster Keaton expert. The proposal by the artist is that the sculpture be 14 feet tall, be 13 and a half feet long, and 10 feet wide. So keep in mind that the artwork is an elephant with a boy standing on top of it. So and the intent is that the elephant will be life-size elephant and then a boy on top of that. So we looked at 2 different locations. We talked about a number, but narrowed it down to 2. One is at Lakeshore and Waterworks. Anne, would you mind putting that map up? So this is where Waterworks dead ends into Lakeshore Drive. It would be across the street from Waterworks, across from where Bluffton School used to be. There is a historical marker there right now, and this is on property that the city owns. It's part of the filtration plant property. And it's right alongside the bike trail that goes along Lakeshore Drive. Sorry, I should have let you know I was going to ask you to do that.
That's all right. That's all right. You can keep talking.
Okay. The second option is at Lakeshore and Edgewater. The committee really liked this area because it really is kind of the entrance to the Actors Colony area. It gets driven by many times a day by lots of cars, so it would be very visible to the community. And again, that would be a city-owned site because that would be within the right-of-way of Lakeshore and Edgewater. The project is dependent on the site being approved. We've taken a number of things into consideration. Again, we really wanted this to be visible. This is something that we're doing with all of the MCPAI projects, is making sure that they're visible and accessible to the public. The other map is the one that's at Waterworks and Lakeshore. Do you have that one, Ann, too? So we have to decide on a site before we can do much of anything else, really. Oh, that was the book at least, so you can see what the
Oh, sorry.
the sketches. No, that's all right. So here's the other property. You can see Waterworks there, that goes down into Bluffton, and we own that property that's kind of highlighted or outlined in blue. It is expected that the public is going to want to interact with this. And will you scroll back down so they can see the elephant? So once you see this, you can imagine that the people are going to want to stop and have their picture taken with it and things like that. So one of the things that we're considering is how easy is it for the public to get to the site and be safe doing so. So all those things are entering into our conversation and choosing the site. Our proposal is that we would install the work in conjunction with the release of a documentary on Buster Keaton and a Damfino convention. So that would be happening about a little bit less than a year from now. So, questions? I do have Judy Hayner here, who is our who's the liaison for the MCPAI and is really leading up all of these projects, helping find artists and write proposals and gather funding and all those fun things. So if I can't answer a question, Judy might be able to.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, any questions or thoughts on this proposed art project? Commissioner Emery.
Again with me. I've gotten a lot of feedback about this project, and I think I know one person out of maybe 100 that I've heard from out there that do not like it at Edgewater and Lakeshore. Just so you know.
Do you know
and
what
it
the
brings
reasons
up,
are?
and as I'm looking at this, and you said yes, people would love to get pictures taken there. To put it at Edgewater and Lakeshore would mean people would be parking in the Vikings parking lots. There's nowhere else to park along there.
There's on-street parking on both Edgewater and Lakeshore Drive.
Okay, but then that would be blocking more traffic than we already have a traffic issue in the summertime.
How would they block traffic if they're parked?
It's just more traffic to have to deal with, is what I'm thinking. There's rarely cars parked along there as it is, but I'm thinking Waterworks, and that's been suggested it be at Waterworks and Lakeshore. People could park at the beach and walk up, so to get photos taken. Anyway, that's the 2 cents I've been given to give to you.
So, thank you, I appreciate that. What was the reason that people didn't want it at Lakeshore and Edgewater? Was it just parking?
It's a parking issue. It's the people that live around it don't. One person that lives right there said she doesn't want to look out her living room window and see a 10-foot elephant. So, and that was pretty much the consensus of the other neighbors that live directly in that vicinity. So just so you know.
Thank you. One of the concerns when we were talking about these different sites that I shared with Judy, and there are others that share the same concern, is the location at Waterworks doesn't have parking because there is no on-street parking at Lakeshore Drive, so people are most likely to park on the street on Waterworks, and crossing Lakeshore Drive at Waterworks is not going to be simple or probably safe. I agree that people can park at the beach and walk up. I think that their inclination will be to try to be closer. But I appreciate the perspective and the idea of having people park at the beach. One other concern that I had is with having it at Waterworks is it would be directly visible from another project that was part of this initiative. And one of the things that we try to do is distribute the art so that people, they have like their own unique sense, and they don't detract from each other.
So,
Good, Commissioner Emery?
has this piece of art already been commissioned?
No,
No.
we can't do anything until we have a site secured.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any follow-up, Commissioner Emery?
No.
No? Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioners, any other questions or thoughts at this time? So,
I just want to
Commissioner
clarify
Gorman.
because all of the other pieces of art have been half crowdfunded, right? Like they've been paid for by this opportunity, but like our community has also contributed. So
Oh, yes, I
yeah,
think
yeah.
I read a statistic, and maybe it's old because it wasn't, Band Together wasn't probably included in that one.
yeah.
But I think 80% of the funds have been raised. So the initiative was founded by Patrick O'Leary, and he's dedicated a specific amount to each project. So that's $25,000. And not a single project has cost $25,000.
Right.
Many of them much, much more than that. So, yeah, it's mostly funded by our community.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, no, I just transparently I love Lakeshore and Edgewater more, but I don't know. I do worry about the traffic there, but I like knowing that you can park on the side of the road. But I do share the concerns we've heard about people crossing Lakeshore because I think they will park to be close to it and walk across. So I defer to my commissioners that live in that ward.
Thank you, Commissioner Gorman. Between those two sites that were mentioned, I'd be of the mind that the Lakeshore and Edgewater would be better situated with the proposed new configuration if we move forward with that. Because then you could access it without having to cross. Like if you were, now you'd have to, I don't know if Hager's Hideaway and Vikings would welcome people, temporarily parking in the parking lot in order to access that, but their users would be able to access it from there. And then if we put the new crosswalk there, which I know they do welcome, the new crosswalk, that crosswalk, I've heard from many people about that crosswalk. The new crosswalk would make it more accessible in that regard. Be that as it may, I have similar thoughts as what you just mentioned a moment ago in terms of having art be spread about and not concentrated, particularly these monumental art pieces concentrated in particular areas of our community. And while there have been a couple out of the city or on the periphery of the city, almost all of them have been downtown, with the exception of this other one in Beechwood Bluffton. And now we're talking about another monumental one in Beechwood Bluffton. And so we have not done any on the east side of our city. And so that's something that I personally would like us, and I know this isn't our project, this is a separate initiative, Muskegon City Public Art Initiative, funded seed money from Patrick O'Leary, $250,000 for 10 projects. And we have the excellent leadership of Judith Hayner on bringing these projects to life and helping to crowdfund a lot of money to make each of these projects happen. Rightfully or wrongfully, people perceive them to be city projects. And in a number of ways, we have supported them, either direct contributions financially or providing space to accommodate them or DPW workers. Now, we're not paying for the lion's share of them, but we typically have some level of contribution at the same time. And while I would like to see an elephant with a kid on top of it, I think it's a nice nod to Bluffton's history. It's a nice nod to Buster Keaton. But at the same time, I'm left wanting for us to spread that love of public art around our city. And particularly I have in mind Jackson Hill, where we had done not my administration, the past administration had conducted a Mayor's Institute on City Design for Jackson Hill and investing equitably in Jackson Hill. And that called out for several different phases of things to do, one of which was this celebration of history and relationship building and community celebration and so on and so forth. And so I see working with that Jackson Hill neighborhood on doing a monumental art piece in their neighborhood as something that dovetails and aligns well with that Mayor's Institute on City Design, as well as the intent of the MCPAI at the same time. And so I don't want to take away or diminish this particular project, but I do also want to recognize that we have not seen this invested or focus elsewhere in our city outside of the core downtown and Beach Road Bluffton. And so I really would like us to look at how we can bring some attention and resources in public art to other neighborhoods, whether that is Jackson Hill or Sheldon Park or Angel or the like. But Commissioner Hood?
I missed out on the elephant history of Bluffton. What's the significance for the elephant in the Bluffton neighborhood? I mentioned you. I heard you say something about.
Yeah, they used to house a mint called Minnie the elephant. Does somebody want to speak on? Mr. Patch, can you speak on the history of the elephant and Bluffton?
I believe I'm on your agenda. And I'd like to pass out copies of this.
Thank you.
Here.
Thank you.
How many of you, by chance, in the room, have been to the Keaton Films at the Frauenthal in October? Okay. What I got here is a booklet on the Actors Colony that I'm a co-author on. The question came up, what's an elephant got to do with Bluffton? What happened is, back at the turn of the century, a guy named Joe Keaton and his wife Myra, along with their son, performed at the Lake Michigan Park Theater in Muskegon, which used to be located down along the beach. Once upon a time, Pierre Marquette Park had an amusement park down there. And one of the things that they had down there was a vaudeville theater. The Keatons were vaudevillians that happened to perform in Muskegon in 1902 and 1905, fell in love with the place. And their father, Joe Keaton, Buster's father, advertised to all his friends about this little slice of heaven that he had found in Muskegon, Michigan. And what he wanted to do was form an actors colony there, a place for vaudevillians to go in the summertime when they were less active on the road because air conditioning didn't exist in theaters at the time. And that's what he did, is that he created an actors colony in the city of Muskegon where they say upwards of 200 vaudevillians used to summer. And this is back in the time frame from about 1908 into the 1930s. One of the acts that located in Muskegon was a guy named Max Gruber. And he and his wife had performed around the world. If you look on the back page of what I just gave you, you'll see Maximilian Gruber's elephants, marvelous performing animals. Down on Cherry Street, he had a home, built a barn behind it. It's probably, at least for those that pay attention, one of the most famous sites in the city of Muskegon. It's the location that he kept his elephant. Over time, he had 3 elephants there, Minnie the second, who died young, and then little Eva the elephant. But the elephant was part of a touring act that went across the country and previously around the world as a performer in vaudeville. The image that you see on your screens of Buster Keaton standing on the elephant is young Buster Keaton standing on Minnie the elephant, owned by Max Gruber. So this is really what it's highlighting. If you turn to page 30 in your books, what you'll see there is a map. That is the Actors Colony, and it's really located, if you'll look there, along Wilcox and into the neighborhood along Walnut, Cherry Street, and down along Edgewater. The Keaton's home was actually on Edgewater, at one of the furthest points on the map there. Take your time to flip through the book when you get the chance. But basically what happened was that Joe Keaton bought property along Edgewater and sold various parcels to friends in vaudeville who built cottages, and they stayed here in the summertime. Now, since, as about a 9-year-old, I learned the story of Buster Keaton being in the Bluffton neighborhood. When I learned that, I was fascinated by silent film stars, and ultimately in 1992 I was contacted by a gal who wanted to bring to Muskegon people who were interested in Keaton, because for Buster, Muskegon, Michigan was his hometown. He wasn't born here. He was born in Pickaway, Kansas. But his parents built their first ever home, this cottage along Edgewater. In 1995, the International Buster Keaton Society had their first convention in the city of Muskegon. And they've been coming here for the last 29 years. Every October, they show Keaton films at the Frauenthal. How many of you in the room have been to those films? If you haven't, take the chance to go check out the Frauenthal Theater on the first weekend in October, on that Saturday. The Damfinos host Keaton films at the Frauenthal, and they've done this for 29 years. This group brings to town individuals from literally across the globe. We've had people here this past year from a person from Sweden. They come from Canada. There's 3 of us that have been to every convention, one of which is from London, England. They've been here from France, from Germany, from Portugal, from New Zealand. It's really kind of stunning who kind of shows up in town, but they come here because of Keaton's ties to Muskegon. Now, I'm thrilled by the idea that we're going to have a second sculpture honoring Keaton and ties to this place that he called his hometown. My personal opinion, and this dates back to 1997, when I used an earlier edition of this booklet to raise funds to buy a historical marker for Bluffton. Yes, you have to buy a state historic marker. You can have a reason for it, but you have to purchase it. I was asked where it should go. A number of people said, why don't you put it on the lawn of where the Keatons lived? Well, the problem with that site is nobody would ever see it. It's along Edgewater facing Muskegon Lake. The place I suggested that it be put is the place that it landed, at Waterworks and Lakeshore Drive. And the reason I requested that was because we were starting to build this bike path, this pedestrian path along the waterfront in Muskegon, and it would run right past that site. And my thought was, at least then, people walking the neighborhood or walking that bike path would stumble upon this historic marker and read about it. On the back of that booklet again, you can see 1/2 of that historic marker. One side honors Buster Keaton, the other side honors the Actors Colony. It sits at that site because it overlooks what is truly the Actors Colony. Bluffton itself is defined by the neighborhood down there, and obviously got its name from the section of town known as Bluffton. A lot of our neighborhoods are named after school districts or schools that are located there. If you look, the Actors Colony, like I say, ran down Wilcox to Edgewater and filled that neighborhood. I don't know where absolutely every one of the 200 people that resided stayed while they were here, but I do know where a number of the Actors Colonies did locate, their residents did locate, and you'll see them on the map. My pitch on this has been this sculpture should be located where that historic marker is. A, it tells part of the story. B, it overlooks that neighborhood. And since 1995, I've been working on presenting a walking tour. How many of you been on the walking tour? All right. When I walk through that neighborhood, I tell the stories that I've learned over time of who lives where, who lived where, their background to the Actors Colony, and how this all interplayed into the Keaton life, where you've got a kid who was born in 1895, who basically came to Muskegon every summer for 10 summers, starting in 1908 until 1917, where by chance he bumped into a guy named Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle in New York, and became a movie star. In his own autobiography, he refers to the best times of his life were the summers he spent in Muskegon, Michigan. And on that walking tour, we walk down Wilcox. We walk up Walnut, down Thompson for a block, down Cherry, continue down Wilcox to Edgewater. We'll take a walk along Lakeshore Drive from Pierre Marquette down to a street named in honor of the Keatons, Keaton Court. The total walk that I take those people on is a little over a mile, almost a mile and a half in total, walking to those points and back. To locate the sculpture at that triangle, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. I certainly won't include that on the walking tour. Just to walk out to that point would add approximately another, well, over half mile to that walk. And to be honest, people don't want to walk that far. Walking them a little over a mile is more than enough. I honestly think that locating this at Waterworks and Lakeshore Drive would make more sense. We talk about a crosswalk. How many of you know that there is a crosswalk right there? I joke about it all the time. As I gathered people through, I say I need my safety belt because we're stopping traffic. Inevitably, when I'm talking at that historic marker, I see people riding past on their bikes and walking that pedestrian trail just like it was meant to be. And for that reason, I think this would be an ideal location for it. If there's concerns about parking, there certainly is some parking along Wilcox. You have to cross Lakeshore Drive, but that should be, at least in my eyes, the important thing for our city to make sure it's safe to cross right there. It's going to be a shorter crosswalk at that location than the proposed locations currently being pitched out at that triangle of Edgewater and Lakeshore Drive. If you're going to put a crosswalk closer to the Vikings, which is really where it should be, because if you see people crossing Lakeshore Drive there, they're crossing over that parking lot that the Vikings maintain on the other side. If you use either crosswalk, you're still going to have to deal with that proposed new turn. It doesn't seem very logical to me to place it at the location. So anyway, I just thought I'd pop in the door here to make my views known on what I know about Keaton, kind of explain the story, to certainly invite you on a walking tour. If you'd love to come with me, I'm happy to do it. Just get a hold of me. I hold them usually once a month throughout the summer, but it goes into the fall as well. It looks like a pretty good week for a walking tour if anyone's interested. And second, to certainly invite you to go visit the Keaton Films in October. When they perform, your dollar spent don't go to me. They go to support that beautiful theater that we have down there. It'll give you the chance to see Keaton as a movie star. He was one of the big 3 silent film stars back in the day. More importantly, you'll get to hear that organ. And I always joke about this with people. I say, you'll hear that organ, and they'll go, organ? Yes. That probably means this is a silent film. I'm like, yes. That probably means it's black and white too, huh? Yeah. I don't do black and white movies. I say repeatedly, if I can get you there, I got you. Because odds are you will laugh out loud because they're comedies. And laughter's contagious. You'll get to see this beautiful theater that we have in the city of Muskegon, Michigan, You'll get to hear that great theater organ played by an individual that comes up here every year from Chicago to play it. And more than likely, at the end of it, you're going to cheer. You don't do that very often in movies. So if you get the chance, please stop at the Fronthal next October. Ideally, somewhere in that time frame, we'll show this Keaton film that we've been working on called Buster Keaton Home, because this is really what he considered his hometown. Any questions, let me know. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pesh. Nope, don't go anywhere just yet. There might be some questions for you. But thank you, Mr. Pesh, for sharing that history of Bluffton, the history of Keaton in our community, and for your many years of efforts to keep that history alive here in Muskegon. That is much appreciated. And I really welcome the explanation of the connection, why you think the Wilcox and Lakeshore intersection is the best, most sensible place.
That's my personal opinion. Is I think it's the ideal location for it. It overlooks what really was the Actors Colony. Bluffton is talked about as a whole. You know, while I'm lecturing and speaking, I know there's been conversations of at some point repaving Thompson. It's kind of a beat up road. I'm the first to say that. That would be a little heartbreaking to me in the sense that it's really the one location that we still have in town that shows where the trolley line ran. And that's certainly part of my walking tour. As I point out, if you look down, this is the path that trolley took to come back through the neighborhood and as it went back down to the train station. That little neighborhood has still got highlights in it. There's moments, I talk about my architectural nightmare down there, which is a nice 3-story building that overlooks the water that took a variance for the city to allow this person to build. It changes the scope of that neighborhood. That neighborhood's built on cottages that have been turned into summer homes, but I can point out where Samaroff and Sonia lived. I can point out where the Grubers lived. I can point out where a number of those individuals spent their summers. And it's a treasure. One of the things I always joke about, and I need to revise this a little bit, every town, I guess I can revise it right now, every town has McDonald's. Nobody goes on vacation to see that town's McDonald's. What brings them to towns is the things that make them unique. And what's great about this city of Muskegon is that we have a host of stories that make us unique, from Keaton to the Snurfer to Big Red Football to Greyhound and how it got its name. There's all these things that stand out about this town, and we really need to highlight those things.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Thank you for helping to highlight those stories. Any questions for Mr. Pesh? All right. Thank you again.
Any other questions for me?
So, yeah. By the way, we are going to be reconstructing Thompson, along with pretty much the entire Bluffton area, where we have to redo the sewer and water mains underneath. And so the roads are going to be reconstructed at the same time over there. So unfortunately, yeah, that portion with the tracks is going to be removed. If this were to move forward at that site, the T, where the marker is right now, just off of Wilcox, as we're redoing the roads around there, Wilcox and Thompson and the rest, like, something to keep in mind if it moves it forward there, making sure there's on-street parking near proximity, perhaps. But also I'm wondering, because that is butting up against a critical dune, woodland dune, we're going to have to work with the state and get the permitting in order to put this, because I presume you're going to have to cut into, no? Like,
I don't think so.
Is there enough space that you're not going to have any impact on the dunes over there, where the marker is right now?
I think we would do our best to make sure that we chose a place that didn't.
Okay.
There's actually a fair amount of land there by that marker.
Okay. So okay. I haven't walked it recently. I just recall like there being woodland and dunes right behind it. But perhaps there is significant space to accommodate the artwork as well without interfering with the dune line. Were there any other locations considered outside of the Edgewater Lakeshore and then that Wilcox Lakeshore? Like, is it not sensible? I'm just thinking of other locations within Bluffton proper or is it because it's not going to be highly visible, highly trafficked, that pretty much anything within Bluffton proper was taken off the table?
Essentially, that's how the conversation went. I had suggested a number of places within Bluffton, and thought it might be kind of neat to send people into Bluffton. Maybe they learn a little bit more of the history of the Actors Colony. But the Downtown Arts Committee really thought that it was necessary to have it more visible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Gotcha.
And there aren't any like easy locations to put it within the neighborhood.
Yeah. I was just thinking,
And I can say that Judy had approached a certain property owner thinking that there could be a really neat place for it, but that person's not interested.
not interesting. I was wondering the same thing, the old Bluffton school site. That's where the play field, the ball field that Keaton played at's at. That could be a nice location. But I was also thinking if that road were to go through, was that? Yeah, old Wilcox were to connect.
Mm-hmm.
And if Wilcox were to go through the Bluffton school property, perhaps that's an opportunity to put an island on that new roadway as a boulevard and put the artwork there and connect them. I don't know. I'm
That
just
was kind of
thinking
our
out
thought.
loud.
That was our thought too.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking out loud.
Yep.
So, okay. I mean, I like the project. Again, I just still have, I don't know if you want to call them reservations or thoughts about how I really would like us to see investments elsewhere in our city, particularly, on the center to east side of our city, outside of the downtown and Beachwood Bluffton area that, we haven't seen those kind of investments from a public art perspective. So,
I would love to hear from each of you if you would support the project and where you might support the project. So we actually have a Downtown Arts Committee meeting tomorrow morning. So it would be nice to be able to update them on how this conversation went and determine if this project is likely to move forward or not. Just to get some pressure on you.
can't, so this is the 8th one, the 9th one's the portal, the 10th one remains to be determined. Miss Hayner, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Come on up.
I really appreciate your consideration, and I really understand the challenges of the kinds of conversations that we're having about site and roads and safety and all of that. I want you to understand that this kind of all of our projects have, interestingly enough, kind of started with sites, because if we don't have a site, we don't have a project. This would be project number 8, is that right? No, 9. I can't keep up. Anyway, we do have plans for all 10. This one would be 8, and then we have a plan for 9. This would be 9, excuse me, and 10. The site decision is what it all rests on. And we have looked at other sites, and I'm open to other sites. But if we want to get this going, I have not issued a contract for the artist because I can't do that until I know we've got a secured site. If this isn't possible, there'll be another slot that'll be open. And there is something, kind of a plan B, if we can't do this project, that would involve a different area of the city. But it's kind of either or. Our commitment with the Muskegon City Public Art Initiative is for 10 projects. The portal is number 8. By the way, thank you for your support of that. There'll be a story on Fox News tonight. We're very excited about that happening. This project, if we can get a decision, is something that will also happen next fall, hopefully in time for the Dan Mafino's 30th convention and the unveiling of that film. And for me, personally, I love this idea because I think for most of Muskegon, it will anchor this story. We know, thanks to Ron, many of us in this room know about Buster Keaton. Most people in Muskegon do not. But this sculpture would certainly create that kind of attention and that understanding of the story. And I think it would anchor it into the minds of who we are as part of our story. It's part of the magic of Muskegon. I really want to do this project. I've got the artist. It's a cost-effective project. It would be phenomenal. But if it can't be done, I understand that. And yep, there is a plan B for a different project. So I would just hope that we can figure this out in the next very few weeks so I can get the artist started. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So outside of the city's support for the site location and potential DPW resources associated with that to make the space available, you're not anticipating or requesting any monetary outlay, capital outlay from the city
Correct.
of Muskegon.
I'm not.
For this
I
project.
have to think this is not going to be very hard to raise money for. I think
Oh,
there'll be
yeah.
a lot of excitement. We did present it to Dan Mafinos because they were in town on that weekend. Very excited and some promises of support coming from those people who are not from Muskegon. No, I think this will not be hard to raise the money for. So no, I'm not asking for anything else, just a site.
Okay.
All right.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you. Any
Thank
questions for Ms. Hayner? No.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will say that I would agree that the Wilcox spot would be the better spot for it, for all the reasons. I don't need to repeat it. All the reasons that have been explained why it's the better spot tonight. So I agree with that. And this is a project that is supported and by all indications is feasible and can get done to coincide with the anniversary. So I'm inclined to support it. I still would love us to look at how we can look at other areas of our city to invest in and support. But I don't want to personally impede progress on this particular project because I want to see projects elsewhere in our city. So I for one support moving this project forward in the preferred location at Wilcox and Lakeshore Drive. Commissioners, can you please indicate? It sounds like we want to hear from each member of the commission as to your sentiments on moving this project forward. Commissioner St. Clair.
I agree with the mayor. Yeah, I would support it if it is desired by the community. I think if we go with the waterworks location, people are a lot more comfortable with that. And it sounds like that is also a good location. And I also would strongly encourage looking at something on the east side of the city for the 10th project.
Thank you, Commissioner St. Clair. Commissioner Hood.
I support it if that's what the community over there would like. I mean, I feel for the resident that said that she didn't want to look out her window at the elephant every morning. I mean, I can sympathize with her about that because it's probably not what she planned to do when she moved there. So if that's what the community, they don't mind it there, I don't mind it there. It's a great story about the elephant and the guy that trained it too, just to say so.
Thank you, Commissioner Hood. And just to clarify too, the person that said they didn't want to see the elephant, that was if it were located at the Edgewater Lakeshore, the Triangle area. That's where they would see it, and they really didn't necessarily want to wake up every morning and seeing it there.
Okay.
So at the preferred location, we wouldn't have that conundrum.
Oh, I thought that's what it was.
Commissioner Emery.
I don't think I need to express, again, not my opinions, but those of my constituents of the location of this. But I do agree with you. Thank you. We absolutely need to honor our east side neighborhoods like Jackson Hill and the history they have. So I'm hoping that the next project will go there. So thank you.
And even if it's not one of the 10, keeping the MCPI alive and doing 11th or 12th or 3rd, continue that initiative. But that's a conversation for another time. But
And I would also like to thank Mr. Pesch for his voice in this and his expertise in Buster Keaton. So thank you.
Please know that I have been advocating all along for some art that happens outside of the west side and the downtown.
thank you.
And I will continue to do so.
Thank you for advocating that. Commissioner
I
Gorman.
was gonna say I can verify that. So yes, and it is. Please know it really is priority for the entire committee. They are looking at our entire city. So just stay tuned. So we've got some really cool ideas. But yeah, I concur with everybody else about this one, and I'm excited to see it move forward.
One last question. How do we anticipate the elephant to be configured on that location? Like, is it going to be as if it's walking out of the forest and Buster's going to be facing like Michigan area? Or, I mean, that's all TBD. Or is it going to be faced, north-south and Buster's going to be looking at Bluffton? I'm just curious as to how that's going to be situated.
Well,
Oh, neat. All right. Excellent. Well, I think it's an exciting project. I do like it.
thank you all.
Thank you. All right. Next up, DPW Asset Management Software. DPW Director Dan Vanderhyde. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Looks like maybe we're having some technical difficulties. Maybe those will resolve themselves while I plug in.
No signal.
It's like, it completely went dark.
This might be okay. Sorry.
Right.
While we're waiting.
Technical difficulties have been befuddling me all day.
Yeah.
Par for the course right now.
You don't know what's going on.
Was it last time this happened? It was somebody kicked a wire.
That's what I was wondering if there could be did somebody get complaint? Oh.
And it was down by.
It was.
Commissioner.
Commissioner.
Yeah.
He's not here to kick the wire.
He's not here to
so-
kick the wire, but
He had kicked it last week.
I was gonna go behind you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go by.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, maybe I moved the chair when I came back.
These are all connected.
Everything's plugged in?
Here you go, Mayor.
Stretch. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Oh,
That wasn't it.
Good try.
Gonna get to go back in. All right, that was just on TV, wasn't it? Me crawling under the desk. You missed me crawling under the desk.
yeah, I can. But if it's not, we'll do that.
That's wrong.
Can you make it without it?
Yeah.
I can. Yeah, it'll
Jill and I
be a little harder to follow, but I can certainly go without it.
Oh, he won't. We can reboot the system. It'll take about 5 minutes. He could continue. He won't have his mic.
No, I literally.
Oh, you want so the mics won't work while the system's rebooting?
Correct.
Oh, if we can take a 5-minute break and
Saw
see
him
if
the
we
next
can
day,
make
and
it
we were
work.
all like.
How important are the visuals?
I'll describe it as absolutely best I can.
Bill also has a presentation.
Oh, safe, but yeah, we have another presentation with safe build that's going to require. Okay, yeah, let's reboot it. We're just gonna. Oh, we can't because we have microphones. I was gonna say we'll do public comment while we're waiting. We can't do that because we need microphones. So we're gonna reboot, and then you can get started if you'd like, or we can take a 5-minute intermission for everybody.
I would say
That's up to you. I can probably talk loud enough, but it won't be recorded for
Oh
posterity.
yeah, that's
so
true.
that's up to you.
The microphone issue again. Okay, we're just gonna take a 5-minute intermission while we reboot our system so that we have technology working, so that we can do this presentation, that everyone at home can follow along as well as in the audience. So we're gonna take a 5-minute intermission right now.
So, unfortunately, without the presentation, I will attempt to talk my way through kind of what this software proposal is without the pretty pictures. So, at Public Works, each day, we assign crews to essentially two different things. Emergencies or urgent things that have come up, and then tasks that we do throughout the year, typically related to maintenance of things that the city owns, things like streets, water mains, sewers, etc. All of those things that we own as a city are called assets. We have a few asset management tools at our disposal. We have a GIS system, a geographic information system, which is essentially a map that shows where all of those things are. All the pipes, all the streets, all the hydrants, etc. What we don't have is a computer system that helps us manage those assets. And so we end up relying upon internal knowledge, experience of our staff, which is excellent. But what we don't have is the ability to quote unquote remind ourselves or look at how changes to our maintenance practices could impact things over time. We typically hand out a piece of paper every morning to each employee called a blue sheet that has their daily task on it, the truck that they should drive to that task, the piece of equipment that they need to do that job. At the end of the day, they turn it in back to their supervisor with the number of hours they spent on it, maybe the number of yards of concrete, etc. We are behind the times, frankly. As an organization, the paper way of doing that passed out of favor amongst public works organizations many years ago. So this software is a proposal to bring us up to the modern standard and in line with our neighboring communities and communities of our size throughout the country. So it's a single software system that will house all of our assets as a city, or at least all the ones that Public Works is responsible for. And we'll be able to track over time all those assets and the maintenance tasks and things that are associated with them. One of the benefits of this software, which is called Cartograph, is it is also a work order management system. So we'll be able to get rid of all those pieces of paper every morning. The system will remind the supervisor, hey, it's time to flush that hydrant, or it's time to patch the potholes on that road, because it's been so long since we've done it. You know, in terms of it's been some certain number of days, weeks, years, whatever it may be, since that has been done. And that will lead to better management of our assets, and it will lead to the ability to plan for ways to change how we maintain things over time. If we were to maintain those assets more often or less often, rebuild them more often or less often, and change the way that we maintain them, we can plan that over time. We can see how that will change just within the software and be able to budget and plan appropriately for those changes. We own a lot of things at Public Works in the city, right? We have streets, we have water mains, sanitary sewers, which are what carry our toilet water, for lack of a better term, stormwater pipes. We have traffic signals, street lights, benches, hydrants. We have any number of things in our parks, playgrounds, things like that, trees even. All of those things fit within this software. It's specifically designed for public works organizations like ours, and it contains the ability to manage all of those assets. Because we have so much, and we only have so many staff, we're proposing that this software would apply only to water and sewer in the first year of rolling it out. In future years, we would add additional assets and departments. So water and sewer in this first year, maybe say streets and stormwater in the second year, parks and facilities in the third year, and so on. Kind of walking through the various things that it does, right? Let's look at an example of a hydrant. So where is that hydrant? Well, we already know that. We've got a map called GIS where that is. This system will tie into that. Some of the things that we either don't know or we could add to this system are things like the age of that hydrant, the condition of it. Is it in good shape, bad shape? When was the last time it was flushed? Once we get those kinds of things into that system, it can, like I said, recommend you should be flushing this hydrant once a year. And if you flush it once a year, over time, that hydrant will last longer than it otherwise would have. We can, the supervisor can issue a crew to that hydrant to repair it if it's broken. The computer will send that work order to the employees directly, rather than relying on the supervisor to write it down, the employees to get it back to the supervisor. It'll just ask each employee a series of questions. Which truck did you take? How long were you there? That information then is stored in that computer system. And instead of our excellent staff of 5 customer service representatives digging through filing cabinets when we want to know how often has that hydrant been maintained, we can simply generate a report. And we'll know when it comes time to budget, we can say, this is how often we should be flushing those hydrants. This is how long that takes. That's how much it costs. Therefore, that's what we should budget. Currently, we do it using rules of thumb, past practice, things like that, right? It'll allow us to generate reports, whether we choose to display some of those on the website, right? Or whether the manager, the mayor, the commission, or me, myself, want to know how long does it take for us to flush that hydrant? How much does it cost for us to flush all of our hydrants across the city? How is that translated into the cost that we charge our citizens, right? Those kinds of reports will be much easier to obtain, and we can be really flexible with the data that we can report. It'll really help us with budgeting, as I described. Again, I had some nice graphics for you, but really the summary is Public Works is often thought of as kind of the steady Eddie of the city world, right? That everything we do is sort of the same, that everything is slow and happens at the pace of infrastructure, right? The fact is, and frankly, we had a real present example of this recently, right? With the Halloween storm, things can change really quickly. And being able to issue work orders to our employees on the fly, have them respond in real time, what they're doing, where they're at, whether they're completed with that task, how all of that information translates into maintenance over time, right? How many hours did we put on those wood chippers? How many hours did we put on those trucks as we were working overtime? Things like that goes into the maintenance of those vehicles so that we can say, that truck got used quite a bit more this year than it did last. Well, that's because we had the storm, right? We can plan for those kinds of replacements over time. So it will modernize our operations, allow us to be more accurate in our budgeting, and over time, we believe will save money rather than cost money. To get into the costs, the item is going to be on the approval agenda tomorrow, so you'll see in your packet for tomorrow a detailed breakdown, since we can't see one tonight. But essentially, the software cost is $40,000 per year for that water and sewer domain, is what they call it. And we would be signing a 5-year contract for those 2 portions of the software. My goal is next year to come to you and ask for a smaller amount of money in addition to that, in order to add additional domains, right? So if it's $40,000 per year for the water and sewer portions, next year I hope to come to you for, say, streets and drainage, and say our cost per year is going to go up $10,000 or something like that. In addition to that, there's setup services. So the company anticipates once we sign the contract, it'll take about 6 months for them to take our information from our GIS system, convert it, build it into their program, customize the program the way that we want, create integrations, they call them, which are ways that this software would talk to BS&A on the finance side, would talk to our meter software, the software that reads our meters, and converts that information into all sorts of things that we can use, right? So that's another $55,000 this year to integrate that software. There's some devices in our cars that, or in our trucks, I should say, that need to be upgraded as a part of this effort. That's about another $20,000. Only about a third of our DPW workers currently have city cell phones or city devices. In fact, most of them don't have a city email address either. All of that stuff is necessary to make the software work, so that each employee can have a device that replaces that piece of paper that they get in the morning. That's a one-time additional cost of about $20,000. And the email, on top of that, that I heard from Jason, our IT director, is another $12,000. So all of those things added up are about $150,000 this year. And I know that that sounds like a lot of money, but keep in mind that DPW's budget is over $40 million, combining all the assets and things that we do across all our different departments, the capital improvements, the maintenance that we do in water and sewer and roads and all of those things. So it is a large number, and yet within the context of everything that we do, it is a very reasonable amount of money, I believe, to spend on a system that's going to essentially transform the way that our DPW operates. Again, there will be ongoing software costs, and I'll be back, I hope, next year to talk about additional assets that we would add to the software, and that will have a cost in the future. But again, I firmly believe that this software will change the way that we work in such a way that we will become more efficient at the things that we do and the budgets and things like that that we create. I would welcome any questions or thoughts. Looks like the manager maybe has something.
Mr. Manager.
And I just want to add that Director Vanderhyde worked with Director Bose in IT to look at how all these would integrate with other systems that we have to make sure that this was the best option. He kind of alluded to it a little bit in his presentation, but the amount of homework I think that has gone into this recommendation for this product, and looking at other options as well. Director Vanderhyde spent a lot of time working through all of that, to his credit, to make sure that this is the best option for us.
Excellent. Fantastic. You presented this information dispassionately with an engineer's hat. I'm excited. I am thoroughly looking forward to this adoption and implementation. I think this is an important and impactful upgrade to our systems, one that's, as you've acknowledged, long overdue. And so I'm excited that we're catching up to jumping into the 21st century with this, that's going to be able to create greater efficiencies and more effective service, and resiliency as well, while generating a higher quality of information that is readily available, that is actionable, that can help inform future planning and budgeting. So I'm excited.
I am
by
too,
this.
even though I may not show.
No, he's excited.
I appreciate your work and IT and all of our team members' work on moving this forward. And I know it's going to be an adjustment for our DPW workforce to adapt to this, but I think it's going to be for the best, for the most good for the long term. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Questions or comments, commissioners? Commissioner Emery.
You answered a couple. I had a question about tablets, phones, how this information was going to get to our employees. But you answered that. You also answered the question of cost. Do we know of any other cities that use this?
So there are no cities in our area that use this software. There are others in the state, and I had there was a slide about this. I can get you the slides afterwards. Fort Wayne, Indiana, or excuse me, I'm sorry, South Bend, Indiana uses this software. Kent County has used a small portion of this software. So yes, there are people that we have talked with, and this is the main competitor that we found to this software called CityWorks, which is one that is popular in our area. It is not as comprehensive as this one, and because we maintain so many assets in our Public Works Department, including a filtration plant and Parks and Recreation and some of the other things that are separate departments at many cities, this is the one that allows us to combine all of those things under one roof.
So eventually we could grow to that with this. Awesome.
I hope so.
This might be too early to ask you this, but do we have any idea dollar-wise how much we could save?
I asked that question of Cartograph, and they don't have that data really available on a percentage basis or anything like that, right? They've got lots of case studies and references that they'll give us that say, we saved money over time, that kind of thing. But there are no, industry-wide metrics that say 50 years later, we had saved $1 million or something like that. So I can't give you specific numbers other than to say that the other communities that have used this software and other softwares like it have over time demonstrated savings.
And it's more than just saving money. It's also making things more efficient.
Absolutely. It should improve response for our community. It should improve response to reports and budgeting that are needed for the things that we do. And it should, frankly, just make life at Public Works easier and more efficient.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Emery. I wonder if there are any doctoral students out there, candidates out there that might want to do the dissertation and use the City of Muskegon as an example of how you do realize cost savings by implementing such technology and utilizing going forward, because you're saving a heck of a lot of time. Someone doesn't have to dig through umpteen different filing cabinets, find something in paper, and be able to just pull it up on the computer right away and help you forecasting and planning and redirecting so many benefits to this.
If anyone's out there looking to do a project like that, give us a call.
Spread the word.
Or to the question you asked me one time in one of our meetings about a work thing, I'm like, well, we actually have track it on paper, and I think that was a little surprising.
Oh yeah, I heard this so much. I was like, really? I'm really happy to see this digital-based system coming online. Anything to ask or add, Commissioner St. Clair, Commissioner Hood? Oh, thank you.
I would just say that if this gets us a little closer to modern times and using all of the many technologies that are available to us that are far advanced from pencil and paper, this is probably a good start.
Yes.
Indeed. While we have you up there, and you mentioned the Halloween snowstorms, can you give us an update on the cleanup and what citizens can expect, our residents can expect as that cleanup continues, particularly with regard to the placement of branches and tree debris on terraces?
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of talked briefly about this at the joint meeting with the public schools, but since we're in a more public venue, I'll just recycle what I said then to say that things that are placed on the terrace that are related to storm damage, that's an important qualifier there, have been, if they're large wood, if they're branches and trunks and things, have been picked up by our department. If they are smaller branches and leaves and things that need to be gone through the chipper, I just got an update that our chipper crews are at about Sanford, working their way from west to east. Again, we talked about how that was just based on the lakeside area being the hardest hit really from the storm. So we started at the west end to accommodate that. If anyone has storm damage related tree items on their terrace and they feel that we missed them or have gone past their area and they still have things, please give us a call. It's not our intent to go back through the city, all over again. But if someone, genuinely has storm damage items on the terrace that we did not get to, we welcome those calls.
Okay. And the phone number that people need to call in to make those reports?
231-724-4100.
4100. Thank you. Commissioner Hood.
Yes. I just want to say that your crew has been doing a great job with that too. Because I've seen the branches that are getting picked up, and at one time people didn't know, but they got them out there, and I see that they're gone. So I just wanted to say good job.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'll pass that along.
Anything else to ask Director Van Hyde at this time? No? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And final item of new business for tonight is Safe Built Overview, and then we have public comment afterwards. Safe Built Overview and update on short-term rentals. And that's being led out by
By a team.
a team of folks.
Yeah. And so they also have a nice presentation that they had put together. Unfortunately, the technology is not going to allow us to see that presentation, but they'll be able to talk through as a team what information they have, and then we can kind of talk about next steps from the commission standpoint. So.
Okay. We'll
Evening,
make do
Mayor and
without
Commission.
technology. Welcome.
My name is Kim Spittler. I'm your Chief Building Official here in Muskegon. I was going to give you some updates on kind of what's been going on in the 3 years that I've been here. It's in a presentation. I can answer any questions you want to know. Evaluation, how many permits we issue, how many inspections we've done, but I know this is, over the short-term process that we want to update you on. So if you don't have any questions that we want to ask about permits and that right at this time, I can introduce Catherine and we can move on to that. But I would like to offer, in some work sessions next year where we could come in and tell you how we do some of our processes and some of the ordinances that we follow and how all that goes. So I'd be more than happy to do that, down the road. So.
Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna do like a quarterly update.
Yeah, something like that, and
Sounds
how
safe,
we
though.
enforce ordinances, some of our processes, how long we do something before it comes to commission or HBA or something like that. So
I would welcome that.
that'd be great. I'll step away and we'll have Catherine give you the update on the short-term rental.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can introduce yourself and your role with Safe Build.
Hi, I'm Catherine, and I'm a rental inspector for Safe Built. You guys had asked for an update on short-term rentals and where we were going. The public wanted to know where rentals were, and a few ideas were tossed out. What we had came up with is I worked with GIS, and I have a map. It's not public yet. You would have seen it on a slide. But they can go and you can actually like zoom in. I can do it. You can kind of zoom in on this map, and the different colors stand for different types of rentals. So you can see if it's a short term or an agreement not to occupy it or anything like that on there. You can access that. I also worked with the IT department. So now when you do the rental search online, it will tell you if it's a short term or a long term. So that has been done and that is in place now. So if they search that, we have also looked at our ticketing process and shortening our ticketing process and asking to go to court with our third ticket. With short terms, we still are not seeing the majority of our problems in short terms. We do ask that if you're going to change anything with short terms, we have that by like January so we can let them know, because we bill for them in March and April for the upcoming year, so we can get them all the information that we're gonna need to go forward with that. Sorry, it's kind of a little over place because we don't have our slides. We only had 43 new registered short terms from 2020 to 2023. Our short terms are still in 90% compliance versus our 50% with our long term. Really all that I have, unless you guys have any questions.
Commissioners? Mr. Manager.
Can I just offer one point of clarification on the needing to know by January any changes that's specifically related to fees and fines and things of that nature, correct?
Yes, and any changes that we're going to make, that way we can let the public know, because they start to register it way before the season because of our timelines. And when we send out bills, we could just send them out all that information all at once versus kind of chopping it up. So any recommendations or any fees or anything like that, I would hope to get something to them so they're not. Because we have lots of questions about what's going on. I get questions if they're being limited. We had also, sorry, excuse me, I forgot about this, talked about doing a hybrid situation. So I had thought about it and I had tossed it around my head, and one night I was laying there in bed and I got thinking about it, and I'm like, a hybrid situation, how could we do this, and trying to figure it out with the computer system. So we could, but the problem that we are going to run in with our hybrid is our short terms right now. I would say about 80% of them are already hybrid. And if we're going to want to actually track our short terms, we're not going to be able to track short terms versus long terms, because the majority of them will just go to that hybrid situation. And I feel like we're going to have a lot of our long terms try to segue into that. So we won't know the difference between our short terms and our long terms. We can't keep track of tenants in there. So if we do go that way, we're going to want to keep in mind that we are not going to have an accurate count on what is actually short terms versus what is long term.
Can you help me understand that? Because if we have long term, short terms, and hybrids, and the hybrids could be short terms or long term, It's not a matter of creating a third classification. It's just we were going to be counting the hybrids as short term, even though they might be predominantly long term, or
The majority of them will go towards the hybrid.
uh-huh.
So if we want to know an accurate count of short-term rentals, we will not have that number because they're going to be registered as hybrid. And then we're going to have long-term who also go to that hybrid status, who were just in the long-term status. So switching that, we're not going to have an accurate count.
But we would have a count of what's purely short term, purely long term, and those that have the flexibility to be long term or short term.
Yes, but that would not accurately show our short terms, I feel like. Because I feel like the majority of them will go to that.
Yeah. But it would give us a ceiling on what the number could potentially be. Because if you're a hybrid, you could be either.
Either or.
Yeah.
And right now, we allow our short terms to be either or. But we tell them if they rent at all for short term, they need to be in that short term category so we can keep track of them for that. But we don't tell them, you can't tell them that they can't go long term in the winter, but that way we have an accurate count right now.
Okay, so technically right now, if I'm understanding you, is that our short terms presently have that flexibility and what already considered hybrids essentially. Like if you are registered as a short term, you have the latitude to rent long term at the same time, but you're operating as a short term.
Correct.
Okay.
Because otherwise they would just register it as long term in the winter and they're different.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Which I think that in my mind that resolves the issue that I had previously, in that if you were a short term, requiring them to go through long term registration again and inspections again, versus no, you're already short term, you already went through the same inspections, you paid a higher fee, like you shouldn't have to go through the long term all over again.
Yep, and I understand it, but the fee is different, and switching them back and forth is
Yeah.
where we run into
But
the
the
issue.
short term
So-
is the higher one, so if they're
Correct.
registered
So-
short term, they have the flexibility to be long term.
Yep.
Okay.
So if you're in the short term already, you can do it as long term. We just say, if you're just doing long term, do not do it that way. But if you rent it at all during short term, then you can
And
do
the
it.
inspection cycle is based upon the short term then, because that's what they're registered as a short term.
So the inspection cycle is the same. So you either get 3 or 6 years. 3 years if you have violations, we have to come back to the home. 6 years if you have 0 violations.
What I just want to get confirmation on, because there was some confusion in the past, is that if they're short term and now they're operating as long term, they're still operating under that same inspection cycle. They're not having to get inspected again because they're now have switched to long term for the winter months or whatnot.
No, so we don't, if they're gonna switch completely from short-term to long-term, they do need to come in and register that as long-term. But if at any time during the year, they're renting it as short-term, they can remain in that short-term status. If for the entire year they are not going to, they would need to come in and re-register that as long-term.
Gotcha. Okay, that clarifies it.
Sorry.
In my mind now, I understand that, and hopefully that provides some clarity and context for our property owners that use long-term and short-term rentals. So, thank you for the update from Safefield's perspective in terms of the registrations, in terms of coming up with that tool so that people can query whether it's a long-term, short-term rental in their neighborhoods, and then looking at that issue of long-term versus short-term on the registration. Where are we from a policy perspective at, and what's our outlook in terms of when we're evaluating, updating our city ordinances and policy regulations?
Yep. And so that's something that I wanted the commission to have some discussion on tonight to give us some additional context. So we have had that survey up since May, I believe. And then we also were looking at the calls for service to short-term rentals. And what we've seen from what the data shows us, from what's in the reports and what's in the calls for service, we're not seeing really any type of call volume or nuisance reports from our short-term rentals. So the approach of enforcement wouldn't seem to solve the problem. And so the question is, from a policy standpoint, how do we look at moving forward? Is it and what type of steps would the commission be interested in us taking? Increased fees, lessening the time that a short-term rental is licensed, caps, what would the caps look like, things of that nature. So one of the unique things about the city of Muskegon as compared to the other communities that we've kind of looked at, our geographic footprint is much, much, much larger than some of the other communities that have these challenges. And so some of the, tools that a smaller community could put in place, like a cap or, X number per block or per street, wouldn't necessarily work for us because of just because of physically how we're set up. And so kind of looking for some direction from the commission on what's your appetite for the level of controls, for lack of a better term, that the commission is looking for. And then we can kind of go down that road from that point. I have talked to a number of commissioners one-on-one about some of the challenges with, looking at it from a neighborhood perspective or like even geographical boundaries from certain streets and things. Do you just end up pushing pushing the short-term rentals, concentrating them into one area over another? And I think, from what I'm seeing from the data from the surveys, again, I said, we're not really getting the feel that there is much of a nuisance issue. It's more of a quality of life issue that people are kind of coming to us about. And so how do we enforce that quality of life side of things as opposed to approaching it from a nuisance standpoint? And when I say nuisance, I mean like the calls to 911 or dispatch about noise or parking and things of that nature. And the total calls on short-term rentals this year was almost nil. So to dispatch, and then the survey results, we haven't had a large participation rate. So the data is kind of minimal there. So
The overarching survey or the incident report?
The incident report part of the survey. Gotcha. So that's why I'm saying this is more like, I think the approach that we need to look at it from is the quality of life discussion, and the balance of what that means in a neighborhood and how that impacts the fabric of a neighborhood, and how do we find that balance between short-term rentals and ensuring that a neighborhood is still a neighborhood.
So to help inform how we're going forward and the timeline, previously earlier this year when we were discussing this, it was staff's desire to have, if any new policy or policy changes, to be effective by next season.
Yes.
So what would that timeline have to be? If we, and that's, what does that look like? In order for it to be effective by next season, when would the policy need to be brought to the city commission to be formally adopted? Whatever the policy is.
Yep.
Like, when would that have to be brought to the city commission for formal adoption to be effective by next season?
So, from the building department's perspective, how they communicate things out, sometime in January to early February would be ideal. But I think we also want to make sure that we're tackling it right. So if it gets pushed back a little bit, I think that's acceptable. So I would certainly say by the second meeting in February, the first meeting in March, having something in place on what that looks like. Okay. I think for us, this is probably going to be a little bit of a moving target until we figure out the balance on how we want things to work. I don't think we're going to hit this right the first time. If you look at our neighbors up in Ludington, they've adjusted their approach, I think 2 or 3 times over the past 5 years. And so, I'm anticipating that's what we're going to end up doing as well. But I think, again, having this, having this direction of, is this a nuisance issue or is this a quality of life issue? That was the first question we had to answer, and that kind of tailors how we move forward.
Okay, so at the latest, ideally, there would be a policy brought forward for formal consideration and adoption by the City Commission by the latest, the first general session in March, in which case, if it's adopted at that time, it'd be effective 10 days after publishing, and so it'd be before the end of March. You'd have time to inform, educate, notice.
If we get it done the first part of March,
It'll be
Earlier the better, but
yes,
Yeah.
we can figure it out.
but by that first meeting in March, okay. In which case, I'm wondering, because we are going to see some changeover on the commission. We've got 3 new members joining us come January. So I'm a little hesitant for us to give you direction on how to proceed without that input, only for a lot of work to potentially be done. And then the commission come January is like, no, that's not the route we want to go. And it could be work for naught. So what I'm wondering is, perhaps it's better for this to be brought to the Legislative Policy Committee meeting. I know you were already talking about inviting the commissioner-elects to the LPC meeting. Would it be sensible to have this brought to the LPC meeting, invite our commissioners-elect to be part of that conversation, to give some consensus or guidance to staff on how to proceed and what policies there's an appetite to further consider and explore and refine? Or if maybe next month's work session, I don't know. I'm just wondering how we might be able to incorporate the newcomers without delaying it to January.
Right.
How we can incorporate our newcomers to the commission into this conversation to help guide staff's efforts going forward.
We could move it to the LPC. We are going to be talking about water rates at LPC, so that'll end up being a dense meeting, which is fine. And I have invited the commissioners-elect to that, to have confirmed that they can come. So that, there could be some logic in that. The December work session, I think we already have a number of items on for that. So, but we can look at doing it at one of those 2 meetings. Right now, water rates are the only thing on the LPC, I believe. So that could be a good option. I guess I would like some direction from those of us on the dais, or those of you on the dais right now, is what type of tool would you like us to do more research on for that meeting? Is it more fee structure? Obviously we talked about shortening the ticketing period, because right now it can pretty much go the whole season. Now this would be a 30-day, 60-day window. I can't remember what the...
Right around 60 days.
Right, yeah. So and right now it's closer to 90. So we're recommending that. We're also looking at a fee structure change. Is there appetite for us to look at some type of a limitation on them, like as far as the total number, and how does that, just thinking about it from a resident standpoint, what type of tool there would you like to see?
I'm interested in exploring those options and understanding what options are available personally. And there are a number of different ways you can move forward with that, whether that's a cap citywide or cap on a neighborhood level, or no cap on residents, renting out a room while they're home, owner occupied rentals, but maybe having caps on other. I'm not here to prescribe a policy. I'm here to say I'm open to further exploration of policies that could include caps.
Okay.
Reasonable limitations. I don't know. There are a number of different ways we can proceed with that, but I, for one, am welcoming of further exploring that. Commissioners?
I agree with that.
Can I hear Commissioner?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard her.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good.
I don't know if Commissioner Hood, if you have anything to ask or add or chime in on your interest in exploring further policy considerations. He was like, I'm about ready to peace out. So I got less than 2 months to go with my term.
So, sure.
Sure. Okay. Commissioner St. Clair, you had something to ask Brad?
I would just say that I am fully aware that any direction that we go is going to have unintended consequences.
Yeah.
And I, much like the mayor, don't pretend to know what the best solution is, but I do not believe that we can continue to do nothing. It's been really clear anecdotally, even if people aren't using the tool, and if you have issues, please use the tool to report your issues.
Yes, please.
That people feel strongly about short-term rentals in their neighborhoods, and it is a quality of life issue. I live in one of the neighborhoods that has a lot of short-term rentals, and they're not a problem per se. But I have 4 houses that are directly around me that are empty a lot of the time, and it's like I was speaking to the city manager about it earlier, and it's like you're missing teeth. You know, it's not necessarily a problem, but there's holes where I used to have neighbors, and now I have often an empty property that I don't have any connection with. And there are no specific incidences that are happening most of the time. But again, I don't have connections with the neighbors that I used to have connections with, and that has a quality of life impact. So I think the answer can't be that we do nothing, but I also am fully aware that short-term rentals fill a need in our community. I know that it is an opportunity for economic development that we really can't overlook. I know that it is a small business opportunity for a lot of people that don't have enormous means. So I don't want to shut the door on them, but I also miss having neighbors.
Thank you. Appreciate you sharing your perspective. Commissioner Groman, do you have anything to add or ask at this time?
No, I'm in the same kind of sense. I know we need to do something. I don't know
Yes.
what that is, but we should move forward with learning as much as we can to get
Yeah.
us on a path.
Yeah. And this is a continued evolution. When we created the short-term rental ordinance a few years back, and now we're revisiting it.
Our mics are. It's the technology's not working.
You guys just aren't speaking loud enough.
I'm usually loud, so that's unusual.
We can hear what Ms. Gorman said. No.
I don't really have anything to add other than we should move the conversation forward.
Okay, so sounds like there's appetite on the commission to further explore policy with regard to potential regulations or limitations on short-term rentals options within the city of Muskegon. And what exactly that looks like and how that looks like is still to be determined. And we will engage our oncoming commissioners as well as we move this process forward. But the expectation is that we will have done the work for an updated policy, new policy or updated policy, to be coming to the City Commission no later than our first general session in March for adoption. So I suppose we should be targeting it being brought to the City Commission work session no later than February, so that we can kind of maybe refine, fine-tune anything, and so they could potentially be brought to the second general session in February, and then, if need be, the first general session in March. But I suppose we should probably be trying to target the February work session if at all possible. That puts work on staff to make it done, but let's at least set that goal, knowing that it might get shifted somewhat. But yeah, any questions or comments, commissioners, before we move forward on public comment? Okay. Thank you. All right, we're going to go into public comment now. I've got a number of forms here. I think a few people may have left, but I'm going to go through them one by one. Do we have Garland Kilgore still here, joining us from Shelton Park neighborhood?
He left.
All right. Sorry we were able to miss you, Mr. Kilgore. If you happen to be watching or at home, you can call in tomorrow during our general session and speak on this matter. This item is on the agenda. They were referring to the Transportation Authority. That is on tomorrow's agenda. So they can call in at the beginning of the meeting or show up at the beginning of the meeting and give public comment in person, Mr. Kilgore. Next up, we have Sean Perry joining us from the NIMS neighborhood. Welcome. You have up to 3 minutes to provide your remarks.
All right. So I am the immediate past chief of the Linnaea Lodge 57, which you keep calling Vikings, and that is what we are. We have 1,700 members. We own our lodge. We own the lot that Torrenson's sits adjacent to, and we own Hager's Hideaway. We are not in favor of this road project that you're projecting for one very good reason, or two very good reasons. The majority of our members are elderly. We are a volunteer organization, which means we have no employees. We run by, for instance, Tuesdays, twice a month, I bartend. Faisal Abdicator's here from our lodge. He's our chief trustee right now. He bartends. We run parties for our members. Many of you have been to them. I know, Mayor, you've been to them. We make a little money off of them, but we make our money off Hager's. That's how we pay the city of Muskegon our taxes, is off Hager's. We rent Hager's about 200 days a year minimum. Hager's holds 200 people. Usually people have about 100 people at their party. The lot for Hager's is very small. That lot is really for handicapped people. If you restrict our use of that lot, we're going to have to put them into the big lot. How will they walk, these handicapped people, people in wheelchairs, people with walkers, people with broken legs, blind people? We can't just think about, we're stakeholders here. We're good to this community. We do so much charitable work. We give $10,000 a year just for Pub Pedal. And all that by volunteerism. Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, YMCA, YWCA, you name it. There's just about every organization in this community that we give charitable money to on a regular basis through our grants committee. So we're asking you to please include us, the stakeholders, in any decision that you make. Don't just poo-poo us. And I said to the mayor earlier, and I don't know where this project stands for the sand docks, but I've been involved with coming here to talk to you about sand docks projects, but I can't foresee people wanting to go off of Waterworks left during the middle of the summer onto Lakeshore. I totally foresee that they will cut through Edgewater to come out onto Lakeshore because it'll be an easier left-hand turn than the big congestion right at the turn circle. The other thing I would like to talk about really quick, and I wasn't part of my thing, was in my neighborhood, I live on Lakeshore Drive. We have a lot of short-term rentals, and I am asking you to cap it. And the reason I'm asking you to cap it is exactly what Commissioner St. Clair, if you just give me 30 seconds, I'll get.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have to cut you off. I'm so sorry. Because we have to stick to the 3-minute rule.
Okay.
However, you are certainly welcome to come back tomorrow or phone in your comment tomorrow. So thank you. Appreciate you joining us this evening, Ms. Perry.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Faisal Abdicator, joining us from the city of Roosevelt Park. Welcome, sir. And you have
I just had a knee replacement. I had a knee replacement recently. I'm like Sean said, I'm past chief of the club, and I'm current trustee. I'd like to thank you for considering a different spot for the elephant. You have to remember, my mom, I'm 75 years old. My mom lived in Lakeside all her life. I lived on Lincoln Street till we moved to the park. And my mom used to tell me about the elephant, about the colony, everything. So I know all about it. I know where the tracks are, everything. So I appreciate you changing the location, because if it would have been in front of the Vikings, in front of Hager's, it would have been a mess. And people would have been trying to park in our lot. They can't park in the street. And I just want to thank you for considering a different spot. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate you joining us this evening. Mr. Pesh joined us earlier and gave his remarks as part of that item. I don't see him anymore, so I imagine this was what he wanted to speak on. And he gave us that history. All right. Mr. Seifert had left. Mr. Leask. Dan Leask joining us from the Beechwood Bluffton neighborhood. Welcome, sir. You have up to 3 minutes to provide your remarks.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Johnson, and the rest of the council for your time this evening. I was here in May of 2023 presenting to City Council around the topic of short-term rentals and our concerns as neighbors. And at that meeting, I stated STR renters should be made aware of local laws, such as not parking across sidewalks, picking up after their dogs, noise restrictions, street parking, etc. This could be provided in a one-page sheet posted in each short-term rental, so renters are aware of the main laws. Possibly it could be the top 10 to keep things simple. Since that time, we've experienced our first season of having an STR directly next door to us. The issue of parking was a common occurrence for us with almost every renter. I decided to go directly to the rental company, which manages the property for the owners. I had a good positive discussion with them and explained that most every renter up to that time was violating Muskegon parking laws. This included parking over sidewalks, as well as leaving a trailer parked on the street for several days, a boat trailer, without a vehicle attached to it. I told them that there was a very active walking neighborhood, and we witnessed families pushing strollers, as well as seniors using walkers, going out into the traffic in the street to navigate around illegally parked vehicles. The rental company was very accommodating and offered to place a note on the back door of the rental house so the renters would be aware of the new law, or of the law. The action did work well, and there were very few incidents after this. Once the renters came into the house, saw the sign, they returned to their vehicles and moved theirs to a better location. I know many of the renters were out of state based upon their license plates, and that may not have known local or state laws. My recommendation to have a sign like this created to provide each short-term rental owner to have displayed alongside their permit, which is currently required to be posted on the back of the door. The sign could also address the issues of garbage as well as noise ordinances, which are major issues experienced with short-term rentals. In the interest of being part of the solution, I'm offering to work with others in helping create this type of signage that could be distributed and displayed at SDRs. In closing, I appreciate the efforts of the city in tracking the tangible issues, but a great deal of what is happening in our neighborhoods is intangible. As Rebecca and Rebecca and Jonathan mentioned, it's quality of life for us. I found a really good quote. This is a clinical and community psychologist, a guy named David McMillan. And he said a community is defined by 4 criteria: membership, houses, influence, integration, and fulfillment of needs, and shared emotional connection. We are a very tight community. We noticed on Halloween, we had one of our biggest Halloweens, but the short-term rentals in our area were dark. And like Rebecca said, we want to have that looked into. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leask. Appreciate you joining us this evening. Next up, Mrs. Leask. Nina Leask, joining us from the Beechwood Bluffton neighborhood. You have up to 3 minutes to provide your remarks.
Okay, thank you. It's no surprise that Muskegon is transitioning from primarily industry into a mix of industry and tourism. And we heard the numbers that we are increasing our short-term rentals. And we also know that there's a housing shortage, and short-term rentals do play a role in that availability. So as you move into this next stage, I really encourage you to keep in mind kind of the bigger picture and the long term of what's impacting things. And Jonathan, as you said, it's kind of about the balance of accommodating the long term, the short term, the hotels, the privacy, seasonal, anyone who needs accommodations, in whether they're short term or long term. And keeping in mind Peter Drucker's words of, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And I know that Safe Bill has been doing some work on this. As many of you know, I took that quote to heart, and I took the data last spring that was supplied to me by Safe Built, and I personally, there's about 50 short-term rentals in the Bluffton, Beechwood, Pierre Marquette area. I personally went out and looked to find if they were actively advertising to kind of validate to see, is this really what's happening? While I did that, I found another 50 that were not on their list, actively advertising to be a short-term rental. So what concerns me is even if you make these changes to any of the policies, and it's not fair to the Ed Bodmans and the people who are following the process and paying the fees and doing this, what do we do? Really try to encourage you and find a solution of how do we get our arms around the ones who are doing it outside of the process, because that's not fair to the people who are doing it properly. It's not fair to the city. You're not getting the fees that we should be getting from it, and we can't measure properly then in order to manage it.
Thank you, Ms. Lees. Good to have you here this evening. So folks that may be home, I still got a few more public comment forms that we'll get to, but folks that may be watching at home, unfortunately, due to the technical issues that we're experiencing right now, we will not be able to allow phone-in comments. So if you're at home looking for the phone-in number and trying to call in, unfortunately, we cannot accept public comment by phone presently. We hope to have that resolved by tomorrow's general session meeting so that folks can phone in at the beginning of the meeting on an agenda item or phone in at the end of the meeting on any topic they wish to speak on. Next up for in-person comment, we do have Nancy Holka joining us from the Beechwood Bluffton neighborhood. Welcome. You have up to 3 minutes to provide your remarks.
I've been sending emails and speaking out at these meetings since 2018, voicing my concern regarding short-term rentals, and essentially I feel like nothing has been done, and that these rentals continue to spread throughout the city like toxic mold in a wet basement. At the time I first started coming here, I noted that at that time the zoning said that there shouldn't be any hotels, motels, or tourist homes in R1 zoning. But I guess the genie got out of the bottle and you haven't figured out a way to put it back in yet. I bought a house in the neighborhood I grew up in, my dream neighborhood, worked hard to get that house, and then I have a motel that opens up next door. And in a neighborhood where maybe the largest household is 5 people, we can have 10 to 20 people there. And that constant coming and going and coming and going, and all the anxiety of not knowing with every 3 days what that next group is going to bring. And it may not rise to the level of we got to call the police, although apparently that did happen once this summer while we were out of town. It's a constant disruption that no other neighbor on our street provides. We have a very quiet neighborhood. This is a big disruption. We're just trying to live our lives, go to work, take care of family members, grieve losses when they happen, and then we've got people partying every day next door. I mean, they're just outside. It is a quality of life issue, and if this continues, we can't stay here. And we're very involved in volunteering in our community, and I grew up here. I support the Big Reds, everything, but we're to the point where we can't keep living like this anymore. And it is contributing to the part of the whole housing crisis. There's a ripple effect going on that people who want to buy homes, the prices are up so high they can't afford to buy them. Houses that used to have apartments in, those aren't being rented anymore. So this ripple effect, and people and families get pushed out and pushed down by the high cost of this housing, and short-term rentals being one of the causes. The people at the end of that ripple are now homeless, living in campground shelters, or on the street. So it's not the whole problem causing that, but it's part of the problem causing this throughout our whole community. Short-term rentals could be acceptable in a commercial zone like those tiny houses are, or if someone's renting a room out in their house and they're there monitoring what's going on, and maybe they only have 1 or 2 people going. But what we have going on now, it just isn't working. And even if you do a cap, if you're the one that has it next to you, that doesn't help. And people can say, well, I've got one on my street and it's not that bad. But until it's next to you, it's different. And I had some people down the street from me, they didn't think it was that bad. Well, now they've got one behind them too. And they realize how bad it is. So please, I'll keep coming back and talking about this. I'm not giving up because something has got to change. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Ms. Hulka. Appreciate you joining us this evening. Next up, we have Brian McCarthy joining us from the Lakeside neighborhood.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome, sir. You have up to 3 minutes to provide your remarks.
So I actually just wanted to stop by to talk about a agenda item that will be on the commission meeting tomorrow. I've been living here since 2010, and I go to the beach nearly every day. And the shack that houses the Matt Kite kite surfing operation has just been really underutilized. They're really only in operation 2 days out of the week. They provide lessons that cost $600 for those lessons, and they're taking a concession stand, which could be utilized in a great way, and treating it as a storage unit. So you see the pictures from the city's RFP for the renovation of the shack and the building of the bathroom. You just see items strewn about in what used to be actually a beautiful shack. It was a concession stand for a long time, and I'm encouraging the city and the commission to work together with the owners of Matt Kite to find a alternative solution to this storage issue. I'm not suggesting in any way that we limit their ability to do business at the beach, but this shack could be used for such a higher and better use than it has been used for the past 14 years. In that time frame, I haven't seen any improvements done to the building by Matt Kite. I haven't seen any offer of business there as far as like a sign or offering their lessons. And to offer $600 lessons at a concession stand seems pretty outrageous to me. You know, there's multiple residents here in Muskegon. We have lots of visitors, and $600 lessons are pretty inaccessible, and it just doesn't seem like a good product market fit for a concession stand at our beach, especially when we saw what Harris Hospitality did at the deck. They created this destination that brings in thousands upon thousands of people to our beach every summer. I'd like to see us come up with an alternative storage solution for Matt Kite so we can release this to an RFP back to the greater community so we can have a really good idea for that shack. The parking lot that exists there has over 100 spaces, and at any given time, Matt Kite can only service 3 to 6 customers. So we have the ability to service hundreds of customers in that parking lot, and the way it's set up now, Matt Kite is only offering business to 6 of those people who are present on 2 days out of the week. This shack really could be open 7 days a week, all summer long. Theoretically, it could be open in the winter too. The amount of people that go down to this parking lot just to park and look at the waves and enjoy the winter time as a break to get down to the beach, we could be serving those people coffee or soup and sandwiches or some other thing in the wintertime. So I encourage you to look at that agenda item before tomorrow and put some thought into it.
Thank you. Appreciate you joining us this evening and sharing your perspective. And last but not least of all, we have our County Commissioner, Jessica Cook, and neighbor from North Muskegon joining us this evening. Welcome.
Thank you, Commission. Jessica Cook, Muskegon County Commissioner for District 6. I was just here to say thank you. I hear the discussion went very well when you discussed the resolution to support the Regional Transit Authority. The County Commission is in full support of this. We're excited for a very successful transition for the control of the Muskegon Area Transit System from the County Board of Commissioners to a much better suited and more specialized transit authority, and just look forward to a great partnership in moving this forward. So thank you.
Awesome. We appreciate your service to our community. And always good to see you. Final call in the audience for public comment if you've not given comment already. No, and unfortunately we do not have phone-in option at this time. Hopefully we'll get that activated and available tomorrow evening for our general session. So, unless there's anything else from the City Commission at this time, I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
Yes. That's
That's going to be a CRC.
Okay. CRC, we having a CRC tonight?
Well, someone's going to share, but yeah, we have a CRC meeting after this. Community Relations Committee meeting. Anything else? Then I'd entertain a motion to adjourn our work session.
So move.
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Hood, supported by Commissioner St. Clair to adjourn the work session. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you, take care, and be well.